Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rutherford County Schools, our budget meeting. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, led tonight by Board Member Aaron Holliday.
Attention. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Odom.
Okay, we're going to begin first with Mr. Sammy is going to kind of give you a breakdown. Some of the figures have come up a little bit. We have not yet received an estimate on property tax revenue, so that's still out there. Can't remember this late that we have not received that.
Reappraisal years are challenging.
So that's still the missing piece really for us tonight on the revenue side, I think. You want to give them you're going to cover your summary sheet? That's this one-page summary sheet. Looks something like this. You may want to take a look at that. Let him see where we are today, basically.
The cuts that Mr. Odom and I made, the first line there, we're down to $387,488,502. Just over $3 million difference. Estimated revenue has improved, and Lisa and I did come up with a property tax number
to use
kind of for this purpose. The March sales tax, which we get in April, came in much better. February was horrible. We don't know if there was a problem in the way the flow of the numbers from the state or whatever. So the estimated revenue for next year is up to $372,538,296. So last week I mentioned 370, hoping to get to 375. I think we will get to 375 if we don't get, we can still get bad news on the BEP. If the sales tax collections hold, if nothing happens with property tax. But right now we're still showing $14,950,206 shortfall between the draft of the budget we've been looking at and estimated revenues. In one other good point, after seeing sales tax, the current year, our revenues should wind up in the $364 million range. If you look on the top line in that budget, our budget as it stands is $365 million, excluding the transfers. And it is impossible under the law that we have to spend 100% of our appropriation. We'd have that many audit findings if we did, because we'd go over and get audit findings like crazy. But we should be our actual revenues should equal our actual expenditures, which is good. That means we have no negative effect to our fund balance, which is good to know. Since we started using fund balance to open Whitworth Buchanan and Oakland middle schools, most years we've come out fairly close between our actual revenues and our actual expenditures. Some years that was because we didn't spend things. But anyway, we're doing well on that, and that's a very positive note. If you look at next to the bottom line, fund balance above 4%. My conservative number is 9.7 million. My moderate is 15 million. 12 million. It will probably come in higher than that, but it's too early to say. The courthouse, we did an accounts payable conversion earlier in the month that Ms. Williams had a lot of fun with, and Mark had a lot of fun balancing today. They have just updated the April numbers and balanced with the trustee. So as we get April underway, and April numbers analyzed and get into May, hopefully my moderate number is too low. I'm pretty confident of that moderate number. in the week since we last talked. And I am hoping at our meeting on the 14th, I've worked on some amendments of the current year budget. Hopefully we can get those in. That makes our numbers more comparable, where you'll see where people have come and gone. Right now, you'll see some inconsistencies in some of the labor line items. After these cleanup amendments, you'll see fewer of those. And I think that's...
Okay, so today we're from estimated revenue to estimated expenditures. We're short how much on the budget we're looking at?
$14,950,000 is still substantial.
That's without using fund balance or with?
That's without.
That's without.
14 without.
We used $6,756,000 last year, which is a sustainable amount if your revenues are holding pretty steady.
What was that number again, Mr. Sanders?
It's at the bottom of that summary page, $6,756,000.
That's what we used last year?
What we used last year.
Okay.
I would like not to go, we have to borrow into it to balance above the 8 million because you're going to be opening 2 schools the next year. You're just kind of kicking the can down the road. When I started, it was between 11 and 13 million because we'd opened those 2 middle schools. So we hadn't cut it in half, but it's less. But if we can do it, we don't need to go into it using it all.
Our plan is to set aside $5 million toward opening costs for Rockdale High. So if we add $5 million to whatever we have this year, you could get into an unsustainable range. That's something we really have to be careful of.
When we get to the joint meeting, do you think you'll have some firm numbers to see how far apart we are?
I hope we have it by our meeting the 14th.
Right, yeah.
You know, we need to, that night, we need to really firm up for our 23rd meeting.
Mr. Odom is going to cover something in a few minutes. There were some requests at the Health and Education Committee last week, and they're wanting to, and it's some stuff that I'll have to take some time and prepare. I should probably do it from whatever version we come up with tonight, asking for some labor details, anything that has a 25% increase. I will include the decreases. One of the requests that they made, which will be challenging, is giving an estimate of the 2019-2020 budget at the joint meeting on May 22nd, which will be a challenge. And they have asked that copies of the budget be given to all commissioners at the 5/17 meeting. So
that's why in the 14th we need to kind of settle it and do a motion to approve it. I'm not asking you tonight to do a motion because I think we still don't know the revenue side. So to vote on something that we don't know part of, we'd have to do it again on the 14th.
And I had on this agenda the Cafeteria Fund, Fund 143, and the Capital Projects Fund. But again, we don't know the revenue on the capital projects side. We don't know how the state funds for school safety could play into that, so we will have those at our next meeting.
Okay, what I'd like to begin with tonight, just to kind of the overview, let's just kind of look at it in, yes ma'am.
I apologize, I've just got another quick question, something I'd like Mr. Sandvig to clarify. So we still don't know property tax. I'm just trying to still wrap my brain around it. So we still don't know property tax numbers.
The assessor's office is working. You have to get during the reappraisal year, you have to get the rate redone by the state.
I understand that.
And Lisa and I came up with a number that I put in yesterday.
Okay, so there is an estimate that's plugged in that you and Lisa Nolan feel like is ballpark.
We think it will go up, if anything, but...
Okay. And then the BEP Growth Fund.
I don't have any BEP growth funds in next year's revenue figure yet.
And it says we won't have them until June?
Well, our final 2017-2018 BEP growth funds, we no longer know that number, and it's happened before, but now we never know that number when we have the July commission meeting, which is that last week of June.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
I guess 2 million, maybe. Again, that pie is sliced
Yeah.
amongst every district that has 1% or more. And so from year to year, growth. So from year to year, that number changes, so.
Okay, thank you.
But just ballparking the shortfall and last year's fund balance that we used, we're about 8 million
Yes, sir.
in the red right now, without knowing the other revenues.
Right.
If you'll get the sheet out, which is your summarized by object code, is the one with your line items. And this is the summary. Let me point out some things, if I could. And for people that's listening to us again over TV or watching too, I'd like for you to flip to page 2 of that. It's one of 4. Flip to page 2. I want to kind of start with some things that we already know that over 80% of our budget is personnel and that sort of things. But these are things that you just pointing out for people listening to us too, that we really do not have any control over. Look at line item 204 there, state retirement. That increase went up by 1.38%. So you're going to pay $3,275,431 more dollars, which is 16%, or $1 out of 7 in our increase here is tied to more retirement that we're having to pay, that the state says we have to pay.
And that is, our classified rate is holding. This is just on the teachers, who are the bulk of our employees.
So if people ask you about that, that's $3 million, of course, you can't control. The next line item down, if you look down at the medical insurance 207, a couple of lines down from that, that's $4,317,204. That's another 10% of our increase. So you stop and you take a look at those too. Now another item that's not here, and this is what we don't have for sure yet, is that the Tasser-Fox index change. Jeff has revised that a little bit to more about 1.3 million. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to take 1.3 million away from us. What it means is, had they not fooled with the formula about the ability to pay, we would have gotten 1.3 million more. Now, if I add up these two items and that one together, you're at 8.8 million. It's $8,892,000. That's how much you're off. Mm-hmm. The fixed cost changes here is as much as what threw us off. Those changes has come from state and the other.
And Mr. Odom, may I comment on
Sure.
the other side of the Tasser-Fox? Our share of state funding dropped, but in their calculation, in the formula, the ability to pay in the local area, in the local government, went up. That same 1.3 million in their estimate.
And we got more people coming, so we'll not get less state dollars. I don't want anybody to think that at all, because you got more students coming. But the amount you get is based upon part of that Tasser-Fox, the ability to pay, where your small rural counties receive more funding support than some of your metropolitan larger counties and more affluent counties. So again, I just want to point out how much is tied in just those three items: retirement, insurance, and that change in state funding. I take a look at another thing, and I'll cover this one because look at this is again on line 189 on the first page of that. If I might cover some of those. The other night at the commission meeting, Mr. Sandvig was asked, what are those people? What is 189 when you look at those positions that are there? And what they are really things where there's nothing else showing for that. I mean, it's things like where our new coaches, the new ones that we're having to add to cover the cost of health. They are things like trainers for the ESL people. They're ROTC instructors. They're our cabling guys, that work here. So it comes from departments all over that there's not a separate line item that the state has given that position. And since they asked for it, we'll give them a copy when they come here the 23rd of what that 189 is. It's about 8.1 positions there or something.
New ones, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
But it's in those areas, so just to let you know what that is, since we were asked about that. Another thing, so let me talk a little bit about some things. Another big changes in here is on line 449 of this summary sheet again. Textbooks. That was about $1,700,000 increase. Even after I've taken out some. I'm going to show you tonight. I've taken out some. We still have an increase of $1,700,000, which is again, that's over 1/4 of your budget increase that we had is tied to that. Line 449. I'm kind of picking the big ones. Looking at line 470 is another one that's got 263% increase. It's $144,800, but you're opening 2 schools. Remember that we have started in recent years, we're employing people here, so for internet cabling and all within our buildings, we're doing it in-house to save money. So what looks like a huge increase of 262% is because you're going to be opening 2 schools. And you're going to do some cabling. And that's the cost associated with that. So that would happen in years when you're opening new schools.
That's a one-time.
Or every time we open a school, but we do that almost every year.
Right.
Or additions. You got to build in the Oakland addition in that. All of those things tie into that cabling. But overall, to the taxpayer, we've saved money because we're doing it in-house, not bidding that piece out. So just point that out for you. I want to show you something else and make sure that people out there hear too. I want you to look at line 415, electricity. Look at line 434, natural gas. And look at line 454, which is water and sewer. What do you see in common for all of those?
Increase. No increase.
No increase, 0%. So some of the things we've been doing to save energy and save money by installing the devices that cuts down on water usage, LED lighting to burn less electricity, the devices we have to turn the system off at night, not heat when it's cold. So is this 3 years in a row? Or 2 years? It's 2 to 3 years. At least 2 years in a row that we haven't had to go up on utility costs, even though we're adding space. So we're doing due diligence here to try to control those costs. I wish I could say mine at home doesn't go up. Some things like that. So that's another thing to take a look at. Do you have other questions on that sheet, or you want to kind of go to the budget cut sheet and then come back to that if you'd like? If you'll pick up, you've got a 2-page possible budget reductions for 2018-19. That's a 2-page one that you have, vertical spreadsheet. And
right behind the agenda. Two agenda.
There it is. Mr. Sandvig and I and some of the others, we looked at some ways because we were close to 19 million off, and what can we start doing to bringing it back? And so in the version you're seeing tonight, what I wanted to do is when we sent you this, when we started this whole process, and I provided you this spreadsheet of budget considerations for 18-19, We've backed off of some of those, and this sheet tells you what we backed off of, okay? Again, looking at that. So the first one, and here's what we've tried to do. I think people are our most important asset. So I've tried where it could to do people, retain people. Tonight, we have not, in this budget, removed any of the 2% raise. That's not gone. But to begin to bring that number down some, my recommendation would be that we take this off. The first one is, and again, I looked at new stuff, things we didn't have before. The commissioners are basically telling us on the side that this is not going to be an improved year budget. It's going to be more of a status quo budget year across the whole county and schools too. And if it is, we'll still have to look at it some more. But here's what's left. So looking at these possible budget reductions from what you saw before, looking at it, one of the things was off is line 16 on the sheet, this sheet that were possible considerations, was the ACT high school curriculum was $85,000. We haven't had that before. That's an 18-19 possibility. So we removed that from this current budget, $85,000. The middle school mastery prep, which was a new item again, is another $9,000. So from the assessment piece, we removed $94,000. Now we still have in there the youth science, which is $42,000, and several other things that we had in that, and continuing costs, that sort of thing. So my recommendation would be to remove that $94,000. Okay, so now looking on down to certified personnel, in our first kind of tier of possible cuts here from where we started, taking a sped teacher off leaves us 8 still in the budget. That's $62,500. I really wanted to get the school psychologist this year. We haven't added one in years. We actually took one away several years ago. I've been here long enough that I can remember when Mr. Watson had to come in and take off the educational assistants and stuff. He tried to save the people that worked straight with teachers. Again, Mr. Gill came back in another year and had to take off. We had the other half-time people that were doing bands in middle schools and some things like that, which we've never been able to add those back. We've had a psychologist retire we didn't replace, and yet added people. But if the school psychologist, by not adding that one, that's about $94,000 because they work extra hours, extra year. The behavior specialist, we put 2 in initially. 1 remains. That would save $94,000, removing 1 of them. The school technology specialist, there's 1 remains there, $65,000. Now, music and art, we had several music and art, but I've removed in this version 4 of those. 2 remain. There's an art position at Blackman High School, and then some to help the very largest middle schools. But we had an aggressive thing to add people, but I don't believe in this budget we're going to be able to do that. So that would save $250,000. School counselors, we had 3 in there to start with. Take out 2, there's 1 school counselor left at $140,000. No, well, let's see, no, we took out $140,000. 1 remains, plus you've got some to start this part-time. It's in there for the Rockville High and all, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is not that position that we're talking about. It's not dedicated people to start open Rocky Fork and Rockville High. So that section of certified personnel would, by removing those, remove $705,000, basically. This I don't like to do. This is where you start changing. Line 60, or line 20 in the sheet you're looking at, the 2-to-1 computers. I hope we can improve this, and I really, really do. We're going to be able to use some of our ending fund balance this year to try to get those in place to start the fall at those middle schools. We're not sure tonight we can save it all. You know, but right now, we think we can pay at least $600,000 to get those orders and started. But I hope to come back the 14th, and I want to say to you that we're going to commit to do that. I really want it to happen. But, you know, right now, just trying to get some numbers down. In classified personnel, we took off 2 of the SPED assistants. These are very much IEP driven, or if you open new comprehensive development, or you open new pre-K type special education classes, they require those ed assistants. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. I know with these SPED positions, you know, there are certain criteria, you know, ratios that we have to look at. And I'm assuming then that what we're taking out of there, we don't feel like is going to put us in danger of not being in compliance with.
Well, it's IEP driven, and we've had years where we had some left over, and we've had other years we had to go back and add money to it just to meet IEPs. You know, you haven't started the year, so you just don't know.
Okay.
But, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. So when we produce an estimated budget, we took away, what I'm saying, we took away 2 from what SPED thought they might need. The certified occupational therapist, one of those off, $58,000. Computer tech, there's nothing left for that one. That would be an $89,000 saving. 2 unassigned custodians. That does not include the custodians again for Rockville High School, Rocky Fork, and those that we bring in. That's a separate line item. So taking 2 of those custodians off, so another $42,000. Both maintenance asked for 2 new positions. We're not opening a new school for 18-19. We are having some additions added. So talked with Mr. Clardy, we took those positions out in this budget, which is $129,000 out of it. Again, one thing when we build a building, typically we have a year's covered under the bid process. So heat and air issues that's related to that on 1 year repair usually is the contractor or subcontractor that built the building. So we're not opening one. Would like to have 1 more plumber and 1 more electrician, but in the process of cutting, I'm trying to, again, got to get some numbers down, trying to save teachers and stuff, really, if you want to know the truth. The Oakland Middle School secretary is going to be at least December or so that'd be about a half a position there. They can't get in that new annex until that time. We initially proposed to you to take the nurses up to year 21, same as teachers. You know, other degree people, this just takes them to year 16, but is 1 step in that direction. So taking that out, removes $73,140. So out of the classified personnel, that removes $478,000, basically. Fine Arts had asked for something like $900,000 in 1 year. We're just not going to be able to do that. We have to phase it in over time, and a lot of those are things that are basically classroom sets and stuff, or sometimes they use music separate from that. So again, that one's a cutback, and that one of $600,000. The world language, we still got $1,531,000 there. You know, from maybe an S, so that took $350,000. So that takes $950,000 away from that. Now these can be itemized by going back to the other line item sheets. Transportation, pull 1 more. We pulled 2. They had 7. We pulled 2 down to 5. Again, if we grow by about 1,100 or something like that, about 50% of our students ride the bus. So that would be roughly 500 to 600 riding a bus, 5 new buses. That's about what we do a bus. They run 2 runs. One of the things we was hoping about getting additional buses is to help with the drive time, with the traffic and all. But that's bare minimum. I don't know how we could take any more bus routes off because we'll grow by that many. You're going to have about 500 to 600 more kids riding a bus, and this adds 5 of the big buses, which are about, what are they, 98, 95 on one run, passenger. So looking at the tier cuts there, this removes almost $3 million from where we were to get back down to that 14 to 16 that we were talking about. That's $2,994,370. Now, if we still got to cut, what comes next? What is it now? Then things on your second sheet of this, page 2, are still in the budget, okay? Things on this page 1, we removed for you tonight to take a look at. They were from the original budget that you saw. Everything on page 1's already been removed. Page 2, none of this has been removed at this time because we hadn't voted on some of these things yet because these are new things. So other things that we'll have to take a look at, and we talked about this to you before, the 2% state raise, if we have to go into the raises to reduce it, every quarter of 1% by both certified and classified is $664,000. When you start having to remove $1 million things at a time, when you have to start moving $2 and $3 million, you don't do it by 1 or 2 positions. You have to start looking at things that amount to a lot of money. And I told y'all earlier, again, I think personnel are our most important thing. But what Rutherford County has done over the years, and what I'm still proposing to do, as I talk to some of these other directors, they say, yeah, we're getting a 2%, but if you are at a step raise, and we have a 2% raise in there, but you get your 2%, we change the 2% at the base. So if you happen to hit a step raise, well, the people that hit that in that year, they may be getting 3 or 3.5 or whatever it is, depending upon that. The other directors, a lot of people don't say anything about that at all. They say, hey, it's 2%. But if you do that, if you go and give 2% across the board, you start really messing up your indexes and steps. So then you find yourself coming back, and the spread that you've built in for each year of experience for teachers, you've tearing that apart because you're giving the 2% here and the 2%. In other words, the people at the bottom, if you're trying to attract new people, 2% of their salary is not near as much money as a 2% overall to the people that's at the higher end. Because the bigger your salary, the more that 2% does. So in a little while, we've done this before. Years ago, not since I've been here, but when it was done, what happens is you start getting behind everybody in the recruitment piece. So what we're saying that probably the best thing is to maintain the step system that you have rather than trying to do the flat raise. But that'd be a decision y'all might want to do.
So if the governor proposes $2 million, 2%, how much of that 2% is local money?
Over half.
Yeah. You see, I don't know a school system in this state, there's 146, that just hires a state minimum. So when they give you 2%, and it's the state minimum, number of teachers, and you got 2 or 3, 400 more, I don't know how much above, I hadn't counted in a while, then that's all yours, the whole increase for them. We give 2% to our classified people. The state sends some in for some people, but it's nowhere near enough to cover that 2%. So the political talk is different than the reality talk. That's what I'm trying to say to you. And certainly when you start adding in insurance cost, retirement cost, all the things that you do locally then on top of that is not covered in a lot of these state costs. So as I said early on, I'm not sure this year if we have to take millions off, we'll be able to hold a full 2. Now, the next line, the 2-to-1, yes, sir.
I'm just on, since we're talking along those lines, the BEP formula, again, this April estimate, we get BEP insurance funds, 19.9 million for our certified and classified. And as Mr. Odom pointed out to you earlier, that number for us is 47,600,000, and that includes our retirees, which is about 3 million. But we don't get half of the insurance cost through the BEP.
If the state sends that 1% for the raise,
It sounds good.
are we required by law to match it?
No, if you exceed the state minimums. You can explain it to them if you want.
As long,
Maintenance of effort also.
there's kind of a maintenance of effort now on teacher pay, but as long as you are over the state average, you are all right. But you only have to put you really only have to put the state funds toward pay or benefits. You can't put them else outside of pay or benefits.
Now, that money will go to people in, like he says, pay or benefit. But they don't cover so many people. That's your problem.
Yeah, we haven't always been able to match, but we have given at least those state dollars and more than the state dollars to our teachers and our classified staff.
So that 1% from the state is how many dollars?
Just on the, well,
Ballpark?
I don't know how many positions they're paying us for. I don't know whether you got that breakdown or not yet.
I don't have it in a way. I could pull it for you, but it'd take me a little bit.
That's fine.
Would you like me to email it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Sandvig, at the top of page 2 of 2 there, on the second page of possible budget reductions, it says that a quarter point is 664,000. Can we estimate from that then that what Mr. Blair is asking, 1% is 2.4?
No, because that includes all of our positions. I'm going to have to go into the BEP file to calculate that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
includes classified also.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right.
No,
And,
this is
and
just
all
the
of our
net.
positions as opposed to our BEP.
Just net change is what that is.
Okay.
The other piece, and again, I hope with ending fund balance, we can finish up this 839,000. I'd really hate to kick it can down the road again. You know, one of the things that we've learned about this test, we've learned a lot of things about testing this year. Most have not been pleasant, of course. But one of the things that we've learned, some districts across the state did not have as much issues as we did. Different districts had different levels of problem. And here's one of the main reasons. The way the program is written now, when a student goes in a computer lab and sits down and they have received their ticket, is what is called a number, that downloads their test based upon what course they're taking. It's downloaded to that particular laptop or computer, whatever device is. Now, if there's a break in it, 30 minutes into it, it cuts off, whites out, whatever it is, everything the student answered supposedly has been stored on that one laptop. Now, we've had trouble recovering. We haven't been successful in every time, even though they said you could. But anyway, it's stored on that one laptop. Well, here's what happens in Rutherford County where we have to depend on labs. You can't bring another student in to test on that computer until that first kid has either submitted their answers or some way gotten that one cleared. So what happens to us where we're having to bring kids into a lab, different sets of kids, it's like that car accident. So you made the schedule today for 3 different groups to use the lab. The first one gets cut off in the middle. Labs 2 and 3 can never come in. But in the districts that had one-on-one or very close to one-on-one, you take to that student, oh, honey, it cut off after 30 minutes, set it aside, we'll come back later and work on it. It doesn't affect anybody else. So it's not doing this, see, because it's just on that computer. So one of the best things, if this process stays in place, if we begin this to get 2-on-1 or 1-on-1, is going to lessen the number of times that you have the kids in lab, because you're going to be closer to having one for each student. I'll tell you a school that really did pretty well this time, Rocky Fork Middle. Because it's a new school, we grandfathered, 590 students or so in that, and so they did not have as much problems as some of our other big middle schools, like 1,400 students at Blackman that's having to stack them up in labs more. It's just a technology thing. Mm-hmm.
Available to them as a
Essentially all had their
and a
own.
lesser number of students.
That's a long, complicated.
But I log on to take one of those tests, or a student does, and I'm assuming they're in the Questar
No,
platform.
not supposed to be. The Questar platform is supposed to have delivered the test to that computer.
Okay.
We're finding all that's not totally true, because if it had delivered it, speech would have worked. In other words, speech would have been, but it's having to go back and pull it again. So I think there's some software problems, but that test for that student in, say, 8th grade math is supposedly downloaded with all their questions, and then as they get to them, they answer them. And then when you hit submit, it's supposed to go really to school server and then load it up at night, but we never could get to the point sometimes to submit. And you can't turn that computer off. Well, you can turn it off, but you can't bring somebody else in on top of it until that first student could click submit, or the answers will be gone. So when you have these breaks in services and see these white screens, it just doesn't work well. Ms. Spurlock's running into the same thing out there, I know. So the lab situation is not working as well as it was supposed to. And we've got more than what they said you were supposed to have. Well over the number, but they didn't anticipate it crashing all the time. So the other part, now that's 839, but I do want us to try to do that, even if, we need to do this. We're behind, because of several years now, we've gotten to a place in the budget, didn't have more money, so we said, let's push the technology another, buy a few more computers and labs, and now it's just catching up with us. And textbooks are going to go to this. So Rutherford County, we've got to do this.
Well, as Mr. Odom and I have discussed, and some of y'all may have been around, but we lose the option to defer items like this. We had it in the past, it wasn't ideal, but as we move more in this direction and the technology is here now, we won't have the option to defer at all.
If we could get someone to champion the technology like Dr. Bullen championed the capital projects, because what we're going through with technology is what experienced years ago with building maintenance until we got that 5 cents.
You really need something ongoing all the time. Because we put the $5 million that they gave us that time, but what we did is put, again, what they call the pipeline of the capacity, and also the receivers in the hallways, the rooms. What we're seeing now, though, we really need to expand to one of those antennas to receive in every classroom. I mean, that's kind of what you're seeing now. Even where we had a receiver, again, when it backs up, everybody starts testing or something. You say you got 3 classrooms trying to hit that receiver, again, you get some backlog there. So we spent all of the money last time improving our ability to hook computers to it with very little money and actually purchasing computers. The place we are now is we need the computers there also.
Maybe at our joint meeting, we could, take another shot at the technology, Penny. Is that what we Was
is.
it a penny?
Yeah.
If we could, I mean, take a shot, because
You know, they didn't take the whole penny away from us before. They rolled it over to us with the capital projects.
we've got to.
I just, and I want to, and your point's very good. I don't want them to get to the capital projects and say, well, you don't have as many roofs to repair this year, or you don't have as many roads to repair, but my answer on them, yeah, but I'm behind in computers over here. You know, it's not, we got to do things for the kids too, you know, not just the buildings, but we've got to make this move. So we got really good arguments to do not take pennies away from us, because sometimes they do.
Yes. Mr. Young?
Mr. Odom, if we're looking at page 1 here on possible budget cuts, what 3 items there would you recommend that we try to keep instead of, because I'm seeing a few items here that I think would be more important than some of these items over on page 2 that we.
Yeah, you know, we can put any of them back that you want. I mean, but what I did first is look, where are we in 17, 18? And if it was a new position, it was the first thing that didn't make it through the rest of the budget, except for student growth positions, teachers, classroom teachers.
Yeah, and back to the maintenance positions, Mr. Clardy, we were unable to get a kitchen worker, and that position was filled as an HVAC worker, which is why we took out the second position. But there was no one out there with the experience and the skills for our pay level to do that job. So we're contracting it out in the cafeteria program.
So if we were to pick 3 off the page 1 that we'd like to
Yeah, we
keep
put it back in the budget.
which three would you want to keep though?
You know, my worry is always, when I look at things like, again, the school psychologist, but that's very, very expensive. The behavior specialist, the number of people we're seeing now that need services to go out and help those classroom teachers in the classroom, because we're going to have to educate the kids. To me, that's critical. I started to bring out tonight a bill that's passed the legislature. Interesting bill. I don't see any way, but it's going to the governor. It's to add a social worker to every elementary school next year at 0 state cost and something like 64 million local costs. You couldn't even find that many social workers. And then the next year they were adding middle school, and the third year out to high school. So if somebody is studying it, and Mr. Sandvig has sent Ms. Dursky, the finance person, say, how about this bill? You know, how can this be? But again, sometimes I think they pass stuff, unfunded mandates, but then pass stuff that they don't even know how they're going to fund. And I don't think they'll be able to enforce it anywhere.
Where is this school counselor scheduled to go?
We were expanding basically in some elementary schools that have a half-time position, try to give them one full position. Try to add, because some of our counselors are split. In some of our larger schools, there's one full and a part, or some of our elementary just got a half. And the same with art and music teachers, they just got a half. That's all they see.
What about line 60, the two for one computers?
I want to fund that whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to fund those computers. When we get done, if we get more revenue and this goes up, if you ask me my number one thing that we need to make sure we do, to me, we need to try to move toward this 2-to-1 on these computers.
Really would need to be 1 for 1. I mean,
I know.
really.
What the plan that technology, and you remember Ms. Benson came, Mr. Zago and the others, the idea was to go ahead, put them in the middle school at 2-to-1, and then the next year put them in the high school. But again, I think if we start providing them, because we're going to get that 30% discount, from Dell, if a family wants to buy a computer for their kid out of that, then I think that you'll see the 2-to-1 will be closer to one-on-one, but a lot of kids would just keep the computer and it would be theirs rather than the school districts. But we just didn't see enough monies, because you virtually double the 1.4 million. If you're putting one-to-one, it's gonna be about 3 million new money. And we just didn't see that we could do that in 1 year.
We gotta crawl before we walk, but the goal should be get to one-to-one.
It should be the goal. You're right.
But we have one more meeting
14th.
to come up with a final presentation to,
And I'm not asking you to vote on any of this really tonight, because if y'all come back though and say, I want to add that one back or something, make a motion, we can stick it back. Just every time you add something back, that your spread gets there again, because we're not there yet.
right.
I mean, we're not there yet. We don't have enough ending fund balance to move money over to make this work.
So you're going to send to the board the effect of that state?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I did, for teachers, it's 2.357 million for teachers. That we get BEP funds, 2.357, including the benefits.
See, my concern is between, if we took 8 million from ending fund balance and put it there, and you're still looking at 13 to 14 here.
Oh, yes.
Folks, we're still off several $1 million.
would you also send to the board at your convenience a breakdown between for supplements for sanctioned activities like TW? Do you have that?
Yeah.
TSSAA and everything else?
This is the hardest budget I've had to deal with. But again, $8 million of this, the retirement and the insurance and losing maybe some BEP on this Tasser-Fox index is that difference. You know, and every once in a while this rolls up, and it does this year. That's the problem.
And this may, I don't know, be a question for Dr. Anthony, and just to, because those were huge, huge increases. And as far as the insurance goes, I mean, did we know going into with the increase in premiums and how we rearranged things this year in terms of like employee cost, share of cost and everything, that we would be looking at that big of an increase for this next year's budget? Or can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
And Jeff has been on the committee even longer than I have, but to my knowledge, I would say yes. The discussions initially from the time I've been on the insurance committee has always been at least an 8% increase.
Okay.
I think we face that or higher next year.
Yeah, and that's what I'm worried about. And we've,
January 2020.
you know, we're already looking at this huge increase for this budget when we don't even know yet what your 19 renewal is going to be. So, you know,
Well, we know, we do have those rates approved by the commission.
and then I guess that kind of begs the question back to is the committee going to be, and I don't remember if this is a full county thing or if this is our decision to make for the school system.
County.
Okay. How much of that increase is going to be passed back to employees?
Actually, you as an elected board do have, that is your decision. We paid more for individual, our employees paid more for individual coverage than the county and less for family. And when one of the years when there was a big increase, that anomaly was fixed. We were given the money, and county and school board since then have paid the same percentage, the same percentages, which kind of helps us in the funding discussions.
Okay.
So while, yes, you have the legal authority to go with a different rate, the impact on our funding.
I'm following you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're going to pay, though, 1% less. Is that correct?
Depends on what plan.
Well, they're paying the same percentages as we are paying, as we have built into this budget.
But they dropped their share.
Yes, and ours dropped also.
Okay.
The commission voted 6 or 7 years ago to start doing that until we get down to 80% board pays and 20%. And then for individual coverage, we're at 90-10 and trying to keep that there. Except for the HRA plan, which is a less expensive plan, we do pay a higher percentage on that one.
You know, our due diligence is to make our best effort or be proactive if this shortage or shortfall continues. But, you know, I'm going to be optimistic that may improve substantially, and maybe some of the cuts won't be as drastic. And but we can be hopeful, but right now we're playing with an unknown because we don't really know what's coming.
Right, and there's some of that. When we get our budget approved the end of June, there are still unknowns that we face, but we'll have a better idea, especially after we close May. We only have a month left of teacher pay and school wind down items and all that.
Yes, sir.
This may not be a good question. I don't really know, but is our goal to send the county commission a budget that absolutely does not require any kind of tax increase? Is that our goal?
No, that's not necessarily a goal, but if we get roughly $600,000 per penny, I mean, you've been there, and we're $4 million off. What's your odds?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes if you're close, they'll meet you.
Yeah.
If you're too far off, they'll say, nope, that's it.
Okay, you don't consider 8 cents close. I'm not really arguing. I'm just.
Well, I'm just going by what they're telling us.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, but there's enough pain here to go around, I would think, and I'm not sure why the students and teachers, staff, and equipment and facilities and these things that Mr. Young just asked about, why we make all the sacrifices. I'm not sure that I'm grasping that.
Well, I mean, of course, their answer to us always is, it's your budget. We give you the money.
But we have 1,200 more students. Are they expecting the cost to be the same every year?
No, but we'll earn more from, of course, funding runs a year behind,
Yeah.
basically ADM.
Yeah.
But that's where the growth funds are from the state supposed to help you catch up. It never does totally. But
Well, I remember when the education assistants were drastically cut that year with Mr. Watson.
131 full and part-time positions. I remember that.
And our scores as a system, and I was aware because I had children in public school, but what I also became aware of is our scores tanked right after that, and we had to hire them all back, or the majority back, because we were performing so poorly academically.
There, just historically, because our reappraisal year and that rollback to the certified rate is during the commission's election year for all 21, getting any pennies added. Now, we've had pennies moved to us before, but I don't think there are 8 pennies out there. But we have. But as far as an increase to the rate is, one year I remember Dr. Bullen. I think he started at 5 or 6 cents on the motion, and he dropped it a penny each. He made them vote all the way through, and I think it was 0 pennies ultimately. But there is that tendency not to add pennies to the rate that year.
But things on this page 1, like Mr. Young was mentioning here, these are basically things we do not have. We do not have these. We didn't have these in 17, 18. That's what I'm saying. We wanted them, and in our first draft, we thought we need them, but we don't. We're not cutting 131.
No.
We're not cutting anybody that we have, is just to begin to how much, where do we put our monies to add to, and how many can we add? Because we preserve the extra number of teachers and all in there. And then, again, the second page, the only other thing, you got your coaching, athletic director, supplement, your archery, and one other computer repair person. Now, again, it depends on if they give us more pennies or don't, where do we go back to? You know, I'd first rather take away things we don't have yet than go in and put something new in and take something else that's been there.
Your repair person, is that the same
one
as
that
what
was
you're talking
remaining.
about with the other, that it's not removing anything, it was a new one?
There's two. We had two in there. You know, we had two for
Okay.
computer repair. It is crazy when you're buying a lot of extra computers and you don't put more repair people in. You know.
But Chairman Jordan, his statement is profound in that we're asking for what we need with the additional students for this year and additional students coming next year. And
here's the two figures they're going to work on. How much more state monies do we get next year than this year? How much is that increase from state monies, basically? And when Ms. Nolan gives us the property tax, how much more are we going to get this year versus next year? And sales tax, how much more this next year versus this year? And they're going to add those three figures up. And that's what they're going to work with to talk about. I'm with you, but they view anything else as improvements or extra and not status quo. But, you know, I'm certainly game to ask for it.
we need improvements.
We better, or the old thing, you stand where you are, you're losing ground.
Yes, sir.
Well, and one of the points that was asked at Health and Ed was, well, at that point we had about 140 new positions. Why do you need so many positions? You're not opening a school. In this version, we're at 129.3, full-time equivalent. And the BEP formula, again, this initial estimate, generates 120 more positions for us. That's just a guideline. But somewhere in this 120 position range is probably a pretty decent place for us if we can wind up there.
Well, we had several that we had to do. You remember the supplanting issue? We had that was coming from the federal because of ESSA, 8 positions.
Yes, sir.
We had to pick those up. We wanted to add the RTI coaches to the high schools so that everybody has the same. We had piloted some. You know, to me, that's not negotiable. And then the other to try to just maintain the pupil-teacher ratio requirement. You know, that I didn't see that as negotiable either. So your 120 is almost totally explained for.
Oh, absolutely.
Now there's one little improvement this year that the state's doing,
Yes.
where they did fund the RTI positions at one position for every 2,750 students. Of course, Rutherford County stepped out there years ago on the improvement, and we put a coach and 2 interventionists in every elementary school and middle school, and have started on our high schools. You know, so there may be enough, there should be enough growth in that 2,751 to cover the high schools, certainly.
Well, it should at
some of
least
the
cover the Title II ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So that should help us cover that.
And we didn't get any movement at all. They kicked the can down the road this year on the school nurses, right? Increasing us
They did
there.
not. No, yeah, they
Go to summer study or something like that.
Again, I served on that state BP committee, and I'm wondering if the social worker, because there was some other language and discussion of this about how many counselors do we have, how many nurses do we have, how many support kind of people for a student, you know, they were looking at. So when this thing morphs out, they may turn around and let you count some existing something that, you know, it's some kind of a ratio of some combination of all of those types of positions. There's no guidance at all that's come down on that at this time. And there was no funding in the state budget for it. It was zero this year. I should have printed that and brought it in here, but I didn't want to get y'all upset to start with a big unfunded mandate. Maybe I should have. That's about as big a one as I'd seen in a long time.
I'm going to be careful how I word this, because I'm not trying to start a fight, certainly not with y'all. But we have 21 commissioners down there. And if you ask each one of them privately, were they interested in and perhaps passionate about education, you would get 21 people that would tell you absolutely yes, they are. And I think in general, school board, I think they've reacted pretty well in a pretty positive way toward us many, many times. And I'm not sure. I'm just not comfortable with, maybe we're not asking. I'm asking to share the problem. I mean, what? I don't think that the commissioners are sitting there thinking, well, you need more bus routes, and you need this huge amount for insurance, which is killing us, and we can't do anything about it. And you need this money for retirement. We can't do anything about that either. And we're short on computers, and we're trying to get to 1-to-1, much less 2-to-1, and we gained 1,000 or more students. And don't you bring us a budget that shows any increases? I just don't think they're doing that. I don't think so.
No, not no increases, but no increases to the
You're not
property
asking
tax.
them to do anything. I'm sorry, Jeff, I interrupted you.
No, no increases to the property tax rate is the communication Mr. Odom and I have gotten.
I mean, you're naturally going to get some more, because we got more from the state. We're going to get more if they don't even go up on the property tax because they've built buildings. We're going to get some more monies there. And so when he gets these other numbers, we can know the spread that we have. On this first sheet originally that we have with our agenda, he's just itemized for you all of the supplements down through there. Don't vote tonight. Don't bring any of that up. I mean, do that, but I'm just saying to implement that, you got an idea of it's in the budget now. All of these are in the budget, right?
Yes, sir.
All of these are in the budget. So if you want to commit and that's it, then if we have to cut, it'll have to come somewhere else. But I mean, you need to be able to look at it and see what's there, or what you want to do, or divide it up, or partial.
What we sent them was the
Big one, the one.
390.
Yes.
This point, yes, sir.
Because we hadn't taken anything off at that point.
Have we got any feedback from them about that number, saying?
What did they tell you that night?
Be candid now.
It was not some of the most positive feedback I've gotten. The number of positions was questioned. I personally feel what we've presented tonight is a much better starting point as we move into, tightening up revenue numbers. I will still be looking at some expenditures. There's not going to be much downward trend anywhere in existing expenditures. But I think this version, it's something we can work with. I think the 390, it was harder to be going in with that much of a shortfall between revenue and expenditures was
At the time, we were thinking it's 23 million or more.
Yeah.
The number of positions that the 390 budget proposed, 139?
No, it was 142 and what was that number?
Bring it up.
They counted it up. Of course, they miscounted some because
That's fine. If it, 140.
on Rockdale High and the stuff.
Okay.
Where he kind of put it in as one equivalent. It was miscounted.
Okay.
My logic in my files doesn't handle partial year certified very well.
Totally
On
understand.
your summary sheet, it was 129.3. You could take everything I've taken off and add it back, and you'd have roughly what it was before. 100.
Right, when I added those up, I counted 10 positions there on page 1. That's why I was thinking 139, but 140, whatever.
41 or 2. He come back and broke off some of the halves that were reported as one and just said, I'm just going to call them a half since that confused them.
Gotcha.
It was 146.9 at our last meeting. So we've dropped it about 17.
Well, we have this discussion, and similar ones, every year, and rightly so. I wouldn't argue that point. But let me say this in another way. If we do not state to the county commission what we need, we haven't done a very good job. I'll just put it like that. Not what we want. I know what I want. Another $50 million would be wonderful, which, by the way, we're entitled to.
If we spent the state average.
If we spent the state average, that's exactly what we would have, and we wouldn't be meeting tonight.
Right.
Wayne would have bought our dinner somewhere. But anyway, I'm not asking for what we want. I'm saying if we determine, you determine, the staff determines, you determine, and then we vote on it and determine what we need, what our students need, our faculty needs, our staff, everybody. And I think, and we can back it up. And I think we can do that. That's what we ought to request. Sometime we've got to pass it along to the people that are going to pay for it. And then they tell us, well, you don't need that. Well, and then I agree, we have but to cut it, perhaps prematurely, I don't know. I wasn't at that meeting. I know you took some heat, a lot of heat. Some of which, by the way, I am told was totally unjustified. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I'll say it. Beg pardon?
I was a little unhappy.
Well, yeah. Well, if I talked to you the next day, yes, you were unhappy. I mean, this is a point that almost all of you in here have made at one point, one time or another. That it's our job to determine, and go ask for it.
Yeah. You know, as we do ask for it. If you look at this sheet, we in 16-17 we were at 341 million, and then when you go over to 17-18 you're 365 million, and we are proposing 387 million. So we are, I mean, each year we've increased it every year.
And we still have improvements in this budget. At 388.5 million.
Well, this merely backs up what I said just a minute ago, and we're not really, I hope we're not arguing here, but that we asked for and they supported us, and hence the increases. But I submit to you, if we are cutting behavior specialists, music and art, a guidance counselor, two additional employees for maintenance, whatever, then we're not asking for what we need. I mean, there it was already there. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't make changes. I'm just generally.
I gave you basically what departments asked for. Now, what's been a little bit different for me than my predecessor was, all the cutting was done before y'all ever saw it the first time. I haven't done that. Okay? I mean, the same with all this is what everybody said. This is what we'd like to have with the very philosophy you're using.
Okay.
But I'm showing you tonight that if to get somewhat closer, to get 4 million more or something, or whatever we can do, that as a director, these are the positions that I'm looking at. I want to preserve people, and I want to stay for sure where we are now. Instead of adding 2, maybe we add 1 or something like that. That's just what I'm saying to you.
I continue to be concerned about what we do with ending fund balance each year.
Me too.
We
And
can't keep doing this. We
I
can't
mean,
keep buying
well,
property.
and it's coming home to roost this year, and it'll even be worse next year.
And our 6.7 million, that is sustainable as long as revenues, because we can't spend all of our appropriation. Mr. Shirley got it to over 98% one year. I don't know how he was able to spend it down that tightly under, I mean, that incredibly tight. We always have 2% plus, which comes down, that's why I kind of look at that 2% as our sustainable. If we have to go above that, and we've had to some in the past, but
Well, you'd like to think 2008 is not coming back around again, but it probably is. And if you don't have a healthy ending fund balance, you won't be able to make payroll.
Well, taking what you're saying, I absolutely agree with. We cannot, when you get money to operate your instructional program, your people to teach your kids, we can't keep going to the well of that money and buying a piece of property and finish building a building because the cost that we couldn't control overran it. But over the last several years, we've done more of that to try to cover these increases in areas that's non-instructional areas. That's why I made my statement. We cannot stay $1,300 below the state average for instruction and make this thing work, folks. It's going to have to go back to appropriations to purchase the property. If we had a piece of property right now, I don't know how we would buy it if they told us that. I mean, and have an ending fund balance and try to use 8 or 9 million to balance next year's budget and have a 3% required set aside. We couldn't do it.
Am I saying it right, Tasser Fox?
yes.
Okay. And the 1,300 below the state average, Tasser Fox is specifically targeting and saying, you're 1,300 below the state average, we're going to penalize you because you
That's
can...
not part of your factor in when they develop that.
I understand it's not, but the net result is we're going to get less money from the BEP formula,
Yes.
and that's going to force us to be 1,250
Yeah.
or something like
But
that.
adjusted something.
They are attacking our good stewardship with the Tasser Fox Index.
No, the Tasser Fox really looks at this.
I understand, but the net
econometric
result.
model of the ability of the county, its economic resources to pay.
Sure.
Ours has slowly been going up in the 20 years I've been.
It's the average income of a family in your county. All of that goes in.
I understand, but I remain, instead of being 1,300 under the state average, they're going to force us to be 1,250 below the state average because of things like the Tasser Fox Index. They are attacking our good stewardship. Are there things on the $2,994,000 page 1 possible budget reductions that tonight we would want to indicate to the director and Mr. Sandvig that we as a board would want to keep in what we present the next time that we get together? When we last stepped away, we were at 390. Today, we have looked at a 387 because of page 1. Are there things on page 1 that we as a board would want to say, wait a second, that right there, the next time we get together?
And that's what, we will have to do that next time. That's what I'm saying. That,
Okay.
or by then, I hope the revenue with the property tax that comes in, that we're not looking at this spread. And that's why I was saying to you tonight, would be my recommendation over what departments gave me to try to reduce it some. This is where I would look first. Again, rather than 2, take 1 off.
I have heard clearly from Mr. Young that line 60, the 2-to-1 computer, $600,000 that you have identified here, it seems to me that Mr. Young says that $600,000 is important. I want to echo that and say that $600,000 is important as well.
In talking to Mr. Solomon and Mr. Clardy, Mr. Zago, I think we can fund our 2-to-1 initiative. I think that 600 we can do within our existing technology department budget, because we won't be buying as many some other pieces of equipment that we were buying. So I think that 600,000 is an easy adjustment for us to make. When we get to page 2, the $840,000, that's where we start biting into our 2-to-1 initiative.
But that's
that we don't want to do.
But page 2 is not in what we're presenting.
No.
Okay, all right. But I think the 600,000. I think I am a board member, and I'm saying put the 600,000 back in.
What he did there is, because he was having to buy less of one type of device where we had the lab, in other words, we talked to Mr. Solomon when they did the estimates. Instead of having to put, we're going to reduce our numbers of labs and put student computers in. The student computers are cheaper than the ones we're keeping in the lab. So the savings difference there is where he's getting that 600,000. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where you go in a lab and you have, where we're going to get, is it $290? What is it? What is these? Is it 290, 190? What is the number figure?
These devices that we're purchasing?
Yeah.
They're
190. The ones we had in the lab that he was buying were close to $800. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're not trying to fool you here, but that's what that is. By shifting our emphasis from the more expensive lab, because they've improved, and the power in a laptop now is so much higher, we think it's a good move to go to this 2-to-1 and not buy as expensive a computer and replace them maybe every 3 years or 4.
We still haven't increased to go to this project, but I think our $840,000 on page 2, which is in the budget, will cover that.
I understand.
I signed off on $820,000 worth of computers today.
Yeah, I told him to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
We're going to buy it out of, it'll lower ending fund balance, and we're going to buy them. That's what we've done.
I think that is very doable, and we can keep on track with our 2-to-1 initiative.
With a growing student population, with a district that speaks 100 different language and dialects, with 40% economically disadvantaged student body, I would think maybe the behavior specialists and the counselors and the school psychologists are critical.
I agree.
So I expect to come back the next time and ask you to add those back in.
The
Psychologist,
the
behavior
specialist,
and the
Those counselors.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also speaks to the safety and security issues inside of our schools when we talk about, are we identifying youth and preemptively addressing concerns before they become disruptive or safety concerns. I 100% agree. That's another one that I had marked here. Those positions need to be in place.
What did you see, Mr. Young, that caught your attention? Especially
Just what we just.
those same 3, or do you have another one that's just kind of standing out for you?
No, school psychologist, behavior specialist, school counselors.
Those were the ones that kind of hurt me. Some of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I wanted to hear you say that.
I was saying it right now.
And my thought is, I would rather positioning ourselves with commission. Go ahead. The next version we give out, if it's y'all's consensus, Mr. Odom agrees, I can put these back in,
Yeah,
send another copy.
That's what I'm saying. We can put them back in.
And move toward preparing some of the answers that Health and Ed asked for based on this version with these positions added back. And yeah,
Well, with some of the statements that Chairman Jordan has made tonight, with what you've said, Mr. Odom, and with what Mr. Sandvik, the health ed and budget desperately they need to hear those again.
Well, and you know, you heard a little bit of my argument tonight, but part of it, hey, we've held utilities for 3 years. Show me your other departments.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, what have you done?
Yes, sir.
And we haven't had any control over the insurance and the other. I mean, there's no way they can say this board hasn't been one of the most
Frugal?
frugal, and to get what they've done, I mean, golly, there's no question. They need to start this project, so it's on page 2 of the agenda. That's what it is.
Mr. Odom,
Yes, sir.
before we get away from this page 1, do you foresee that the ACT is going to continue to increase in its significance of evaluating school performance?
But remember, we've changed. We're covering some of the ACT. This was 2 things we didn't have.
I understand.
But we're switching from one type of software to another. And actually, Mr. Zago saved some money. We went from Smoop
Right.
to purchase a different one that the school said Smoop wasn't doing really what they thought it would. So we switched to something that I think is probably better aligned to the ACT. So I think we've actually done that with putting that in the budget.
And yet we still have 2 areas that we had identified that we wanted to invest: the ACT high school curriculum and the middle school mastery.
I'm not sure that what we have, the high school curriculum, I'm not sure that'll make that much difference on the front end. But what was that particular piece? What was the name of it? Was that Mastery Prep?
The 85,000, is that what?
The 85,000 and the middle school mastery prep 9,000.
We met with the high school principals and talked to them about what they needed in their school, and several of the things that we were buying were universal across the system, and some schools used them well and some schools did not invest in them as heavily as some of the others. So one of the things that we got feedback from those principals that they desired was for us to invest that money in their school, but in the things that they're working with, be it whatever software or whatever they needed, that they felt, and we felt as an instruction department, that if we gave that latitude to the high schools, they would be much more likely to invest their time and energy in utilizing something that they selected themselves, because there's 4 or 5 different things out there that they were using.
You want to put that back?
We added that into that.
What I'm keying on is that as 10 Ready becomes less and less reliable and less significant because of failures in state testing, the ACT becomes more and more reliable and more significant. And I know for a fact that I hear from high schoolers and parents that it's critical, that ACT score and what it does to scholarship dollars and all of those kind of things. We need a culture in Rutherford County where the ACT test matters. It needs to start in middle school, and I hate to lose those 2 items when they are as small as they are and yet have the potential to result in millions of dollars of scholarships. I'd be interested in other board feedback. I feel like there's a consensus on some of these other things. I may be the only one raising that standard on the importance of the ACT, but it's something that I wanted to.
One of the things that's happening with the middle school is adding our STEM in. That the curriculum level is up a notch there. By putting it, which is through our CTE and our other things too. You know, we added our science people over here this year.
Right.
And putting the STEM program in, that's why I thought about Mastery Prep is a practice software. For ACT, which they don't take for about 3 years, I mean, it's, like you say, it's only 9,000. The other thing I hear from middle school principals, don't give us something else to do. Let me do the STEM. Let me do some of these other pieces. I mean, at some point, when the state comes down and says, teach this, something has to go. The length of the day doesn't change. But I'm okay if you want to add back the high school curriculum there. What do you think, Mr. Spurlock, on that one? What would you do, say if you're still at Oakland, what would you do with that?
Quite frankly, I think this, what we've got currently in there, the ACT Inspire,
Yeah.
that's more beneficial to the middle school to grow that culture than ACT. There's some things that we're doing, like Mr. Zago said, that different high schools are using. I would like to see it in there, but I think a lot of it's predicated on where focus is on. I do believe in ACT Inspire. I think that's something we can get down in the middle school and carry it. Eventually do 6th, 7th, and 8th.
AP classes are certainly a strong impact on ACT, am I correct?
They are, and dual enrollment and dual credit, which you're really seeing an increase in that, is also going to help. Because of the graduate ready, report card thing that's coming up, the number of courses, every high school is adding more dual credit, dual enrollment next year. I mean, I'm seeing it all over the place, so I think that will help too. One of your problems is a lot of those don't come till the junior and senior year, and yet you're doing your first ACT in the junior year, and so by being able to give that second ACT test as a senior, I think helps because they get their best score, and it does help. But I don't know what's happened. It'll be interesting to see here, but the State Department of Education was telling us right now they didn't have enough money this fall to give the second ACT to the seniors. They couldn't fund it unless something happened in the legislature. Did Ms. Dursky say anything to you about that when y'all met?
No solution when we met.
And that's what the commissioner had told me when I had asked, but I was hoping through all this process that got worked out, but I don't know.
Okay, let's, if the board is okay with those proposals there, we can certainly vote on the 14th on any of those. You want to do something with this right now?
Yes, I think we did, because she needed that done.
Okay.
She contacted. On the second page of your agenda, this is the Blackman High School contracts with Athletic Surfaces Plus. 2 contracts for Blackman High turf projects are enclosed. The fundraising contract provides for $5,000 in advance expenses and 2.5% fundraising fee if the goal is met. The second contract is for project design engineering, RFP assistance, and project management. The fee for this contract will be 10% of the cost of the project. These costs were included in the estimate Dr. Justice brought to the board. What she's asking is that we allow Dr. Lisa Justice to execute the contracts for Athletic Services Plus as presented at no cost to the board, but they were still going to have to bid the surfaces in that installation. This is really the oversight of that. And when you get into consulting work, 10% is a pretty good fee.
Hey, let me just say that I'd like to have 10% of the $500 million worth of work we've done over the last 14 years.
Isn't that the truth?
And
Make your retirement really nice, wouldn't it?
it would be. But there's something else I want to say, and I've sat here for 14 years and watched this budget process. And we avoid saying this. Maybe for good reason, maybe not. But we've all worked very hard to keep this, the money that we spend down, and to get every penny worth of everything we do. I've contributed to that in the building program. You've contributed to it in everything that we've done. And the $1,200 per student that we're below the average in the state is indicative of that. Now, when we take our budget up to the courthouse that we need, why should we sit there and be treated like we created a problem for them to take care of. We have solved a lot of problems over the years that they never heard. I personally do not want to sit down and be treated like an outlaw, like I'm trying to steal the taxpayers' money. We've all worked hard to get where we are. We are working with this system and giving a valuable education to the students of this county, and it's recognized everywhere. That's the reason that people are coming here. We're powerless over those people. We don't have the power as the building commission does or planning commission to approve or deny subdivisions. We don't have that power. It's not us bringing those people in here. You know, what do we do? Put a gate up? Do we, you know, throw our hands up and say we're going to push this little issue and under? We're not giving the industrial people a tax break. It's not us that's doing that. So don't feel bad about asking for what we need to get the job done. And frankly, you know, I'm through taking the last burning arrow on my rear end when I'm just a messenger. And I think Mr. Sandvig can agree with that. So don't treat us like outlaws when you created the problem, when we just are coming up to ask for what we need to get the job done.
One thing I would like to add to Mr. Clardy's comment, a change I have seen in the 20 years I've been here is more and more of the development and the houses are being built out in the counties because of changes made at the state level. That line, well, we don't control what the municipalities are approving. No, we don't. But we're building a whole lot more of them out in the county where the county does control that.
That's correct.
You want to see the problem, I suggest when you leave here tonight, you drive down Warrior Drive. And after you pass Riverdale High School, look to your left. And when you go, if you want to go make it a little bit worse, when you get to 99, take a left, go to Cason Lane, turn right, and look to your right. On both cases, you will see hundreds of apartments that will be open within the next few months. And matter of fact, one building on Cason Lane is already open. And those kids are going to go to school somewhere.
Can I deviate?
That's just two places. I mean, I don't know what the entire county. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Blair.
Well, just well said, Mr. Clardy.
Yes, absolutely.
But my question on the Blackman contract, no cost to the board, is that the same as no financial responsibility at all to the board?
Yes.
In my mind, it is.
Okay. I just
presented
keep
it.
wanting to make that clear that this is not a board issue.
They want to, so they can get started because we don't.
You want to vote tonight? We can do that, Kim.
Yeah, because you're in a, it's a budget item. It's a financial item.
You want to read the motion
The
again?
motion is to allow Dr. Justice to execute the contract with Athletic Services Plus as presented at no cost to the board.
Is there a motion coming from a board member?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. A second?
Second.
I believe that was Mr. Estes. Further discussion? Comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there opposition?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Michaels? All right. Okay.
So when we come back to 14th, what we, we hope to have some more revenue numbers that are better. See where we are. We're going to put back what you suggested tonight. We are going to have to improve indexes, though, for Mr. Sandvig to do payrolls next year. I mean, any changes we make in any of these other categories that's on your first sheet, we're going to have to act on them in some way next time.
Okay. Let's go back here to number 4 for just a second here. Supplements. I would have liked to have known that this was going to be on here before I showed up tonight, but I think I knew everything except one of them, so I guess I'm in pretty good shape. And you do not want necessarily any votes on these specific items
It's in
tonight.
the budget. They're in the budget.
I understand that they are. But we've discussed everything else, and which is fine. And I'm just giving this board a chance. I mean, you handed it out. So if you want to have a discussion on any one of these, and there's a number of things listed here, you don't have to make a motion on it. But if you want to discuss any of them right now, what you anticipate the 14th, or just whatever you think, now would be a great time to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I personally would like to see the elementary supplements for archery, since we don't supplement anything else in elementary. I'd like to see that taken out.
Okay, now let's see where we are here. That's down
Number D.
DA, isn't it?
Right.
D, Part A. Okay, you're putting that up for discussion, not a motion. Is that right?
I'm glad to make it a motion if you'd like me to.
Well, that's up to you.
I didn't think we were going to vote on anything this evening.
Well, personally, I'd like to wait for the supplement voting, like the others, until the 14th. But I'm not Mr. Estes. He wants to make a motion, he can make one.
I guess what bothers me, Mr. Oldham's taking all these other items out of here. He's did that, which
That's correct.
I'm not speaking for him, but I'm gonna say he probably feels more strongly these items right here than he does $225,000 worth of supplements. You know, and I'm prepared to go, personally, I'm prepared to go down through each one of them. And you got A, B, C, and D here, address it.
The next meeting we'll also have from Mr. Sandvig, you'll be providing us the difference between the sanctioned activity, extracurricular activities, versus the non-sanctioned too.
What do you mean by sanctioned?
TSSAA sanctioned.
And that's going to be surprising because swimming is not, for example. There's some big things that are not
Right.
TSSAA sanctioned. It's kind of interesting.
There are, and again, I would just say too, since we didn't even receive this agenda until we walked in here tonight, that decisions on all of these things actually need to be deferred to give the board time to think about it and have further discussion. So, my input.
I don't have a problem with that, other than, Mr. Chairman, I hope we do address it. We don't let it slip by, because I think this is, in my opinion, this is the second time this stuff's come up that we more or less kicked it to the side.
Well, we'll on the 14th we'll start right there with after we discuss the other page, the other items.
Mr. Chairman?
Go right to it.
Point of information, on the middle school archery supplement, if that is approved, is in our budget, is that 4% in addition to the 10% that's already there, or is that 4% and there's 6% discretionary now, or is there a total?
I'm not sure that they can add any of that 10% to it, because you have another motion that says that you can't take a head coach and add to it. You can do assistants with discretionary. If you set the head coach at 4 to be consistent with what you've done in football, basketball, and the other, I think you, and some of them got maybe 6 this year. That's going to be an issue.
The long sheet in your package is the way those discretionary supplements were in place for this year, just the way the individual schools had opted to use them.
So again, my question is this 4% in addition to that 10?
Discretionary.
Right now it is.
Okay, because I think I would like to see that 4% deducted from that 10%, that if they're going to keep the 6, I'll have 6% discretionary and the 4% archery there.
Right. The effect on the budget would be 0.
Right.
There were a couple of schools
That weren't supplementing archery.
that don't supplement archery or may not have the program.
Got a lot of discrepancies there with where they're spending their money to, I think that would.
And which is when it's a discretionary supplement, that's the way that makes sense. But
Yeah, some of them were 2, 3, 6.
they vary, yes, sir.
I don't think there's anything over 6.
No, I don't think.
But this would freeze it at 4.
Yes, sir.
And if the motion's made properly, it would put the discretionary fund at 6. Okay. I'm fine with that. I don't know about the board, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Mr. Jordan, in the spirit of discussion as you've offered, Mr. Odom, isn't there a policy that we are somewhat setting aside when it comes to athletic directors, that athletic director by policy is required to be an assistant principal?
It's part of the job description.
Job description, that's what it is.
Is that when you advertise for the position, the person has to be willing to serve that position.
Okay.
If the principal so assigns, but you see so much different. I know several of our high schools, it's not an AP.
Okay.
And some of your middle schools, it wouldn't be an AP. It'd be somebody that has coaching experience likely.
I knew it was something. It's a job description, not policy. That helps me to be better. Okay.
We would need to, I guess, put it in. I'm not sure whether it would go into policy. I'm not sure where it would go. But if a principal is going to need some direction as to who he can make athletic director. Now, I suggest to you, he doesn't have to comment, but I suggest to you that Mr. Spurlock put the person at Oakland High School that he thought would be absolutely great at that job in charge of athletic director. And as far as I know, he's done that for a number of years and does a great job. He's not an assistant principal. So, if we want to change that, that's true at other schools too. I just said that because Mr. Spurlock's here. but if we want to make that a job for the assistant principal, I think we're going to have to say so, not just put it in the job description. Now, there may be some other comments that a board member might want to make on that, but yes, sir.
There's two components of that. There's the paperwork, there's the attend the meetings during the school day, those are required meetings, and then there's the supervision part. So even in our school, our APs are playing a role. They do the supervision and things of that nature. It's the other part which would take them out of the building, due to the fact that there are they require meetings frequently that they have to attend, or perhaps maybe a district meeting that they would have to attend. That's the reason why we do it that way. Now, other schools, I know Riverdale does it the same way. Some don't. Some let the AP do that. So there are two components of that. It's not like the AP is not doing some athletic director duties that would fall under the auspice of that position.
That's the concern that I have, is those two components, because athletic director has an inherent perception of supervision of the other coaches. And if we're elevating one coach above other coaches, then that's where I go, do we want to do that? Because that has implications. But if we are assigning duties of scheduling, TSSAA compliance, et cetera, that's the job description, then I'm very, very comfortable with that. It's that supervision part which gives me a little bit of discomfort, because nowhere, we've got department chairs in mathematics or otherwise, but that's where I'm hesitating. Yeah. I just want to make sure that if the board puts in place, a supplement and in effect endorses a athletic director position, that those job descriptions get cleaned up to where the supervision is here appropriately placed and the TSSAA and et cetera duties are appropriately placed there. And with that, I can be very comfortable with that.
There was some discussion too, I suggest probably Mr. Spurlock, your athletic director, doesn't have this problem. I don't know whether he would or not, but he goes out and he talks to a coach in whatever sport, and that coach says, well, you're not my boss. You're not my principal. You're not the assistant principal here. You're athletic director. Is that a problem? He speaks for you anyway.
But he comes back, he or she would come back and communicate with the principal.
Do we have a policy or administrative procedure over how much what's the maximum supplement a certified employee could receive? So if you
do two sports.
So if you're the head football coach and then you're the athletic director, that gives you how much of a supplement, Mr. Sandvik?
32%. 28%.
28%.
Is that right?
You'll make more than principal, isn't it?
Well, you do have a rule. I know that the principal is the highest paid person in the building, which is as it should be. 32? High school.
High school is 6%.
28.
In high school is at 6%.
I don't know if I've ever had anyone in 28 or something.
Can't make more than the principal. Am I right on that? You don't know? I don't know either.
There are people up here that are supervise others that are making more than they do, even in this office, I'll tell you that. Part of it's your degree and experience and stuff like that. In other words, a person with a higher, if you had a doctorate and you were a coach, you BS in 5 for your supplement, but your doctorate would be paying on the front end. So it's a very, very difficult thing to set. And then your principals are on a fixed index based on their degree and all. So
our largest high schools, the lead principal's index is 1 point what? Okay.
3,000 a year.
is it 1 point? I don't know. I was thinking it was adjusted sometime back.
Okay.
Well, I see questions and possible motions on elementary archery, and athletic director is a concern there. And we can certainly discuss every single one of them. I guess we'll have to at least bring them up for a motion on the 14th, but are there other concerns that you want to address right now, other areas?
Your middle school, one of the reasons it's in that job description, your middle school athletic director, in the middle school, there's not a lot of flexibility. In other words, if a kid's not in this class, they got to be in another one. So very often what you run into in a case like that, they don't necessarily have enough flexibility in a schedule to give somebody athletic director where do you put the kids. So the easiest way for them very often sometimes is the AP, be the athletic director. But depending on the size of your school and your flexibility with positions, principals work it out. That's just kind of what they do.
For the principals of the largest.
Just a 40%.
Yes, sir.
The percentage, 1.4 of what?
Okay, you would take whatever his or her degree and experience, 200 base day calendar.
All right. Yeah, you divide that by two, you take the dollar amount, divide by 200, multiply by 230, and multiply by 1.4. I gotta add $1,600. But the coach is a bachelor in fact. Yeah, yes. No matter how many supplements are entitled to the S&P. Right, for the supplement. Mid-40s. Yes. So the coach is not going to make more than the principal. I mean, he has to be head basketball coach, head football coach, head track coach.
We've had some.
It used to happen, yes. Yes, it used to happen. I can give you names if you want it. But I don't think that happens anymore. I don't think. I think that when they dropped to the Bachelor in 5, that took care of that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Moore. Thank you.
Going back to the supplements, just a couple things I'd like to kind of put out there as food for thought for us. You know, if we're truly looking at these supplements and pulling out whether it's elementary archery or assistant or athletic directors or what have you, then we have to, it begs the question of, are we really looking at this from a budgetary standpoint? Is it enough money that it's that significant, or are we going to perhaps consider your recommendation earlier in thought process, as well as Mr. Clardy's, of if we feel like we need this, then why would we not present it in the budget? But let me speak for just a moment, if I may, about the elementary archery supplement. And I know we've talked about this, and we've had presentations, but I just kind of like to make a point here. If we as a board take the position that we're going to look at things and say, well, that's the way we've always done it, why would we change it now? To me, that's a bit of a outdated, kind of archaic way of looking at things. There is a very, very unique and distinct difference in what's being proposed here in supplementing elementary archery coaches than just looking at it from the very, I think, blinder point of view of, well, we've never done elementary supplements, we shouldn't start them now. Because the archery has a very unique, very different perspective on this, from the fact of, if we're not doing something to continue fostering the elementary program, we're not feeding those middle schools and high schools, and we won't consider to continue to see the levels of excellence that we have with those programs. Again, going back to the premise of, there are no community archery programs to develop these students like there are with your baseball, your basketball, your football. So I think it's short-sighted of us to think that just because we decide to supplement archery coaches at an elementary level, that means we're going to have to give in when everybody else starts coming in and saying, well, gee, what about elementary basketball team? What about an elementary baseball team? And if indeed we're looking at it from a true budgetary dollar standpoint that we've got to cut it, then I would be of the mind that all of these supplemented changes that have been recommended by the committee need to go the same direction as well.
I would just add to Ms. Moore's comments that what we're doing in elementary archery also has a distinct academic component. It is completely inclusionary because it is non-discriminatory about ability. We have the facilities because every elementary school has a gymnasium. It is an indoor, it is a year-round opportunity. It found its genesis in an elementary setting with the SRO participation, and it trains focus. It trains real academic skills, and I don't think this board should be overly concerned about breaking that barrier for such a worthy program.
Any further comment, board members? Okay, we all right?
You got direction, yes, sir. Hopefully we'll have some better numbers next time on the revenue side.
Okay, the next meeting is tomorrow night, a work session, 5 o'clock. Ms. Michaels is bringing muffins, aren't you? Well, don't count on the muffins, folks. I appreciate the many comments tonight and excellent input. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned.